Going live.
First ever live YouTube.
Is this our first ever live YouTube? That's mine.
It's my first ever. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Oh, here we are. I think we're live, yours.
Hi, Mark. So we're live on YouTube talking about the federal battery rebate announcement.
Which was just announced yesterday. Interrupted my holiday as I was up at Fronius Beach, which was really annoying. But yours, I reckon we just stop with the fluff.
Yeah.
Already.
Let's get straight into it.
And get straight into it. Okay. So this federal election rebate promise.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about it? Like, is it guaranteed?
No, it's not guaranteed. So look, at the moment, this is a election promise by Labor and will be very much dependent on who gets in power in May. So look, but there is a lot of excitement around it. I think there's well overdue for some form of federal battery rebate.
Yeah, okay. So if Labor doesn't get in, no rebate.
I doubt it. I mean, realistically, the coalition's pretty focused on nuclear right now, which I don't think is going to happen realistically. I think you feel the same
what?
way?
I don't think they even think it's going to happen. So
yeah.
I think you need bipartisan support to get a 20-year project happening, So
yeah.
But if Labor gets in, we will. It looks like we're going to get some really good battery rebate. Actually.
Yeah. So, look, I think the policy is very sound, and actually, I think this is a good point to just very firstly say, bringing down the peak of the duck curve in the early evening is going to be good for everybody, not just the battery owner. It's going to bring down that peak power price for everyone.
And forget about all the environmental part of it. Just as a program, I think it's been rolled out, I think, pretty well. Like government notorious for stuffing up solar rebates or any kind of rebates. This kind of feels like there's some issues with it, which we'll get into. But this kind of feels like it's done well. First, let's get into the main point. Is it going to be means tested from what you understand?
From what I've read, it's not going to be means tested, which basically means regardless of what your income, as long as it's a new battery on a solar system, you're going to be eligible for it.
Yeah, okay. So a brand new battery on could be an existing solar system as well.
Yeah, or solar and battery.
Okay, how do you apply for it?
So look, it's going to probably be applied for like we do with the SDC rebate with the panels. So most likely it'll come off your total invoice after the solar's installed.
So you don't apply for it. The customer doesn't apply for it.
No, look, if it's anything like the solar rebate scheme, the customer's not going to be applying for it themselves.
And that's exactly what we've been told. It's going to be run through that STC claim, the solar rebate scheme, which is a point of sale discount. So your solar system might cost 15 grand. We sell it to you for 10 grand and get 5 grand off the rebate off the government. It'll be similar to that, right?
Yeah, so you'll be paying a gap payment. So it's going to be part of that small technology certificate scheme, which is, very exciting.
So the big question then is, how much are we talking? Do we know the details about that?
It's a bit vague. So at this stage, I've read that it's up to $4,000, but then I've also read that it's going to be, based on the size of the battery. So maybe in the range of $370 a kilowatt hour, up to 50 kilowatt hours. So there's a little bit of an unknown if that $4,000 is purely for domestic, or whether or not it's going to be, potentially $18,000 if you decide to buy a really big battery for your home. But essentially, what we've read, it's going to be both for homeowners, small businesses, and community batteries.
Yeah, and when you say it's unknown, it's not even legislated yet. So even if we did know, we still wouldn't know because it's not legislated, right?
Correct.
So,
again, it's an election promise. It's all still a little bit up in the air, and we're getting the information basically along with everybody else. Yeah.
But it's fair to say that if you get even a medium-sized battery, an 11.5 kilowatt-hour battery, $4 grand off the price is somewhere up around in the realm of 30%. 30%, as they're saying,
No, look, I think it's a really good idea. And look, if it is scaled, depending on the size, look, you might want to get a bigger battery than what you originally were planning to, because one of the things that has been stated is it's going to be a one-time only. So it won't be a case where if you get a small battery now and you expand later, that you can apply it a second time. But again, we're still waiting to find out those finer details.
And so this is the first catch, Yorick, that I dealt with yesterday afternoon as I was hearing it, thinking, oh man, what are we going to do for the next, our lead time, all our customers that are booked in for quite a while.
Yeah, the same thing went through my head, Mark.
Yeah. And so, like, for example, we had a customer today that we are installing a Tesla for. I got onto him the phone this morning and said, look, do you want to, sorry, this is a text message, but do you want to claim this rebate? Because if you do want to claim the rebate for your Tesla Powerwall, we're going to have to turn it on in the beginning of July, 1st of July. We can install it today, but the way that we've understood the rollout of this is that we can't turn it on until the 1st of July.
Yeah. So, I mean, does that mean there's a level of urgency? No. I think it's important. We need to wait to see what happens with the election, but also, you may want to postpone your battery installation just a little bit into early July.
Yeah, I hate for you to say that, Yorick, because it's not really good for me with all the customers and your customers that are wanting to go ahead with batteries.
Yeah.
Because of cash flow for business, but we're fine with that. Like, we'd rather give out sound advice and say there could be an issue here that, one, okay, you install a Tesla Powerwall, we want to claim the rebate back on that Tesla Powerwall, that STC rebate on the panels, So if we claim that back, we have to turn the system on. But if we turn the system on, and we've turned the system on, then you can't claim your battery rebate. So then you might have to pay us for the full amount, including the solar rebate. It's going to be a bit of an accounting nightmare in the next short term of time.
Well,
now, I'll give you one other example. Is our BYD battery, right? So this is different because we can turn our solar inverter on and leave the BYD battery off.
Yeah.
But let's say we go and install. You sold the customer, let's say, 11 kilowatt stack of BYDs around about this size. But then they go, hang on, if I put more batteries on, it's not going to cost me much more because I'm going to get more of a rebate potentially. Right?
Yeah.
So as you said, that's only one rebate they get. So how about we wait till we find out all the information and we do it properly the first time?
Yeah, I think doing it properly is really key. And I think one of the concerns that we have, look, whenever there is a government rebate, we've seen this many times, is there'll be a whole bunch of companies trying to basically sell you the cheapest possible battery system. And I think it's really critical. Batteries are not something you want to cheap out on. You want to get it right. It's not only a big investment, even with the rebate, but also there's a safety factor as well. We have to take fire safety very seriously when it comes to the batteries. The other thing too is there's a lot of companies out there selling batteries without backup. Now in Queensland, we've just come through a cyclone. That is a lifesaver for a lot of people, is having that backup. And you pay a little bit extra for those backup circuits, and it does take more time to wire up the battery. But I think if you're going to be spending the money on a battery, at least not have to deal with blackouts going forward as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, do it properly the first time, especially because there's a one-off rebate. You can't come back and expand that battery and get another rebate. Like here's just one example. That cyclone, or the ex-tropical cyclone that hit Brisbane a few weeks ago, or whatever it was, that was a really interesting learning curve for us. And we contacted all of our BYD customers before that period just to give them a heads up on how, a reminder on how to deal with it, and an explanation of an app update. But over that weekend, we got messages, on our website from customers that are like, I'm in a blackout, or a week later, I've been in the blackout for a week.
Yeah.
I spent $30,000 on a battery system. I got a Tesla Powerwall installed in my 3-phase system, and the solar panels aren't charging the battery when there's a blackout. One classic example of an installer that's got no idea what they're doing.
But these aren't our customers.
Not our customers, no.
I mean, I don't think I've actually ever sold a battery without backup. Even though we've talked about it as a concept, I think it's such a no-brainer. You get the backup with the battery and do it right.
But yeah, so let's explain this. There's two things, right? There's battery backup. So the power goes out for half an hour and you start using your battery.
Yep.
But what happens when, and it did happen to us recently, power was out for a week on the Gold Coast, and you've used up all your battery. Does your solar panels keep on charging it? That's something that it seems installers don't consider these kind of things, right?
Yeah. And actually, that's a very common question I do get asked. I mean, look, we might be getting a bit sidetracked here, but yeah, having something that's black start capable, like the Tesla, like the BYD, and look, a lot of quality batteries like the iStore and Anker probably should be able to do this as well. But if we're going to do a battery system, it's going to not only have to get you through well into midnight, because I think that's what's critical, but also if there's a blackout, it kicks in, it supplies your emergency circuits. It doesn't have to be the whole house, but at least your kitchen, lights, maybe a lounge room, keep the internet on, and then if it does completely drain, you're able to recharge it the next morning.
Yeah. Here's one other thing. It's just a bit of a tangent about understanding how to do batteries properly, is that there's a lot of different label kits out there that we can buy with labels. Here's one. What a disaster. You don't need to have a stupid label like that on your battery. Here's another one. Look at this monstrosity. It's not weatherproof. It's going to fall off. So I've spent a long time developing our own labels that are compliant. They make sense. So when you've got a blackout, you know what the heck to do. When your air contact comes around and he wants to turn off your battery, he knows what to do without, killing himself. So not just compliant, but also compliant, not ugly, and in plain English.
And it's going to last as well.
It's going to last.
It needs to last.
Yeah. So we bought a laser etcher, laser cutter machine to make our own labels just so it makes sense, little QR codes with links on videos that we've done on explaining what to do in the case of a blackout and things like that. I think there is going to be this real problem in the industry that all of these cowboys are going to come in, like we see what happens when a rebate comes. They're going to be flogging off cheap batteries that you can get a battery for $500 out of pocket. And it's just going to not work. It's going to be messy. It's going to be potentially dangerous in the event of a blackout,
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing they've put some constraints in. So from what we understand, it's a minimum of a 5 kilowatt hour battery that's going to be eligible, up to 50 kilowatt hours. But then there's a bit of question as to, does that larger size apply only to small businesses? I mean, I'd still argue that a 5 kilowatt hour battery is still fairly tokenistic. I think the main aim of this policy is also to get through that peak of the duck curve, which is going to bring the prices down for everybody. But yeah, no, I think there is going to be a risk where there's going to be a lot of very cheap batteries that are going to be incredibly appealing, but that may not meet the same standards of what you would expect for a quality installation. And I think this is really where it's important to have auditing and thorough auditing. So one of the great things about the Queensland battery scheme, even though it was very short-lived, was every battery system was independently audited. So that meant that it had to be done right.
Yeah, exactly. And it was good for us. We did a lot of those batteries and we got some nitpicking arguments about what we've done wrong, which makes us better,
Yeah.
So I do hope that we do have that thorough auditing process for batteries.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll get rid of some of the cowboys.
Did you have any other, I guess, hopes as part of this announcement?
I'm not sure where you're getting at. You're there, yours. So.
Okay. No worries.
Have you got any aims? Were you angling somewhere?
No. Look, I was just if there was, as an installer, was there anything else that you would want to? If there was any chance to change policies before they get enacted, was there anything you would really want out of a scheme like this?
Yeah.
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, that is really hard. But I think the biggest, I don't know how you get rid of really cheap and nasty battery systems and make them not compliant, and also how you get really shonky installers out of the scheme.
Or auditing.
So auditing is one part of it, yeah, and that is a bit of an after the fact issue. So customers already got the system installed by then. It is a bit of a catch. It's sort of buyer beware. In saying that, though, Yoz, I think it is fair to say that you and I both agree. We were more so me. I was really conservative on the uptake of batteries. I thought they didn't financially make sense. That the technology was far too early. I think I was right a lot of times with that. There's a lot of batteries that have failed.
I agree. I mean, especially in the early days with the SolarEdge and LGs. There's still issues with those products.
And Sungrow had heaps of disasters.
Yeah.
I don't know enough to comment on their current battery. A lot of people love it on paper, but they've had a lot of problems in the past. Sigenergy is such an early product. But there's been a lot of issues in there. I think there is stable battery technology available at the moment. We don't have to deal with NMC technology. We can deal with LFP most of the time. The industry has sort of developed, the standards have developed where the good guys in the industry kind of know what they're doing now. And batteries are basically worth it now.
Yeah.
Not a no-brainer, but they're worth it. But then chuck in a $4,000 or whatever it might be rebate, I think it almost turns to a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And it's a really good time for the grid. The grid needs it, right?
I mean, I have 27 kilowatt hours of battery at my house, and I do not regret it. It cost a lot to do, but every night I'm cooking dinner. I've got the aircon on.
It costs a lot to do. Stop whinging. You've got to have mates rates.
I got a discount, but at the same time, I think it was well worth it. Even without the discount, I was prepared to do it. So it's not to say that it's not something I would do. I would do it myself because I've done it myself.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think the other thing is, is there a level of urgency? Should people jump on it straight away? Because I've heard that there might be a bit of a tapering off with the scheme.
I would say no. So the first thing is, if you've booked in to get a battery, it might be time to reconsider. You might think that the Liberals are going to win, so it's fine, and just go on and install your system next week.
I don't think you need to cancel. I think just a reasonable postponement of the installation is not a bad idea. But obviously, you may want to do that after the 3rd of March, because we won't know who wins the election until early March anyway.
Yeah. So don't put pressure on yourself. It's fine for you to sit back and think about it. But it'll be a little bit like the solar rebate. It'll taper off over time. Every year, it'll reduce, and it might even reduce more as the price of batteries go down, because the government's not going to throw $4,000 at you if the battery costs $3,000.
Yeah.
So,
but I think that it makes sense. I mean, that worked really well for the solar industry with panels, because panel prices are a fraction of what they were when I started 10 years ago.
Yeah. So I wouldn't rush into it. If you're thinking about doing it this year, do it before the end of this year.
Yeah.
Don't do it on the 1st of January, because your rebate will go down. But if, like a lot of things, take your time and consider what you're doing properly.
And again, this is an election promise. So, it's still very much up in the air as to whether or not it will get enacted, but we're definitely excited about it, and we wanted to get it on camera.
Man, do you know how deflated the industry will be if Philips win these now?
Hey, look, as long as it's not nuclear, I'm happy.
Yeah. Oh, really? You don't want nuclear? I want it. I just don't think it's going to happen. So, wow, we've got a whole bunch of comments on there.
I was just reading those.
Yeah, this is new, by the way. I've never done this live stream, so
okay. Well, maybe I'll read one out, and you want to answer, Mark?
Sure, yeah.
So, hi guys, I'm doing a new build. Should I just get the hybrid inverter now? Battery will be installed probably mid next year, or is there a way to retrofit the non-hybrid inverter?
Is there a way to? No. So I'll just put a hybrid inverter on, like the Gen24. If you just install a Gen24 battery inverter now, you can claim your solar rebate, and then your installer can come back at any time and put on a BYD or a Tesla battery, for example. So as long as it's a true hybrid inverter, which basically means it's an inverter with a battery charger in it. There's a lot of, especially in the early days, people would say, oh yeah, this inverter can cope with a battery if you do an AC coupled battery. Yeah,
and look, I was a bit guilty of that myself. I mean, technically, everything is battery compatible.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to use compatible because, you can use an AC coupled battery like the old Powerwall 2s or Franklin. But I think actually these days what we're finding is it's generally better to remove the existing inverter and then replace it with a hybrid and actually get that DC coupled system. But I personally have a retrofitted AC coupled battery and it works well for me.
So that is a little bit of a problem for example, the Tesla Powerwall 3, and I was talking to Tesla earlier today, to Musk himself. No, not really. Is that if you wanted to go Tesla Powerwall 3, you can't, it's a little bit hard, because if you install it tomorrow, for example, then you're going to have to wait to turn your solar on until 1st of July. But if you get, for example, a Fronius inverter, you can turn your solar on, forget about the battery, maybe never install a battery if you want, and then upgrade it for a battery and claim your rebate as two separate items, right? So.
Yeah. I guess you could do the solar now. Battery once the scheme's in place. Actually, I was just sort of trying to read some of the comments while you were talking, Mark, and I do apologize. Actually, a comment we're getting is discharge rates of batteries, and I think that's an interesting thing. Look, the discharge of the batteries is usually more than enough to cover small loads and an emergency backup. Just really full house backup is really hard. Most people don't have a base load of more than 1,000 watts, 500 watts most of the time. If you really need a really fast discharging, just to give you a quick rundown, Powerwall 3 does up to 10 kilowatts on single phase. We can get almost up to 8 kilowatts out of the Fronius plus BYD on single phase, and obviously more on 3 phase. So in that regard, I think that comment, you definitely get more than 3 kilowatts out of any reasonable size battery.
Yeah, and it depends on the inverter though. If you get a 3-phase Fronius, let's say 5 kilowatt inverter, it's a really low discharge rate. Oh, it might still be 3.6.
You'd still be able to get. You'd still be able to get up to 3.6 per phase, but you'd still be able to get up to 5 kilowatts, and that's probably the worst case scenario.
Yeah. So I think the reason that it is a good question is if you're talking about VPPs, and that's the advantage of something like the Tesla Powerwall, or when you're going up to the bigger inverters on Fronius, is that you can discharge a lot quicker, so you can send back all of your battery to the grid in a very short period of time.
Yeah, and VPP is interesting as well, just in the sense that the whole reason for this policy that I can see is not to reduce the bill for the owner of the battery, but also to reduce it for everybody. And so be able to not reduce the total load on the grid, but also supply the grid when there is a peak in demand. Because I was actually part of a VPP briefly when I first got my batteries, and being able to push power into the grid quickly and get paid a premium for that feed-in can actually make the payback period for these batteries under 10 years.
Yeah. And VPPs, that's actually an interesting point. Let's clarify. A VPP means a virtual power plant. if you're listening to this, you're probably a nerd enough to understand that. So, but basically it means that you can sell power back to the grid at 6 o'clock at night for up to $15 a kilowatt hour instead of buying it for 30 cents a kilowatt hour.
But one thing I read in at least in terms of what's available is that it's meant to be VP or virtual power plant compatible batteries. Yes. So I guess one of the questions we had is, how do you distinguish between a battery that's virtual power plant compatible and one that's not? So I suspect it'll be anything that's hardwired in, but maybe not like a portable battery that you can plug into an outlet or a car.
And this is another good reason for being a little bit cautious before you go and install your battery system that you had agreed to install tomorrow, is that even that VPP compatible, let's find out what the heck they're talking about. Maybe they don't even know what they're talking about yet.
Yeah. There's a lot of unknowns, but look, I said, we're both excited. We want it to be enacted. We want our customers to get cheaper batteries, and we want them to get quality batteries. But I think it's just a matter of waiting to see what the election results are, and hopefully it gets enacted very quickly.
Yeah. Did you see any other questions there? That I didn't think we were going to get questions. Yours, I didn't realize this was going to go like this. But if you want,
I have two Gen24 5 kilowatt inverters on a 13 kilowatt solar system. Do both have to be software upgraded? No, that's a really good question. So if you have two 5 kilowatt single phase inverters, only the one that you connect the battery to is the one that gets upgraded. So unfortunately, not only one of those two battery systems, also one of those two inverters will be able to stay active in a blackout, but both of those will be able to charge the battery, one basically through the AC couple and one through the DC couple. So that's a good question.
So there's one here, I think I know where you're getting at. You said 3 by 10 kilowatt hour batteries. That's a lot of money, and I think you can only get one rebate. Yeah. Mark, Kyle, that was a good point, and this is what I said to Yorick too. Is one battery mean one battery stack? Or can you have 2 stacks or 3 stacks and call that one battery system?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, and I don't think anybody does at this stage.
I think I agree with your take. And at first, I thought I meant one battery stack, but I would hope it would be logical and say one battery system. You know,
I think it's fair to say that if it turns out that it's a $4,000 cap, regardless, of the size, then it's probably not going to matter too much, because if you have 2 stacks of 10, you're still only going to get about $4,000. But then obviously if it is scalable all the way up to the 20 or 30, then it'll really come down to how it's written in the legislation. But I would suspect that if it's all being done in one go, it'll probably be the cumulative amount. But then again, when you talk about, say, a Tesla Powerwall, if you have 2 Tesla Powerwalls, is that 2 batteries? That's just too much. But one of those things that we just do not know at this stage.
Yeah. I'm an optimist on this, and I think you can I think you can do 2 Tesla Powerwalls, and you'll be or 3 Tesla Powerwalls, and that'll be one battery system, and you'll get $12,000 back. But I might be wrong. So.
Look, who can? I mean, I'm an optimist as well. I hope that would be the case.
Yeah. Powerwall 3 is definitely likely to be eligible. Yeah. I think there's one comment from Dan. Thanks for that, but I can't see why not.
Yeah, I wouldn't see any reason why that wouldn't be eligible.
Here's an interesting one, Yoz. I don't know if I've talked to you about this yet. So Tesla Powerwall in Australia aren't saying whether their battery is LFP or NMC.
Oh, that's interesting.
That is interesting because it means whether I put danger, your battery might explode on this ridiculous label here, risk of battery explosion. They're the words that Tesla Powerwall tell us. I only need to put those words on there if it's NMC. So I've challenged them about that and said, what battery chemistry are we using? Because you did see when we went over to BYD in Shenzhen, this is just a tangent again, but we may as well.
Yeah.
They did that nail pierce test where they put a nail through a NMC battery, which is my Tesla Model 3.
And my Powerwall 2s that are under the house.
Yeah, but most new batteries now are LFP. Lithium iron phosphate rather than nickel, cobalt, manganese, right?
I can't think of off the top of my head any NMC battery chemistry home storage. But again, it doesn't really.
It could be. Oh, this is a Powerwall 2. It could be the Powerwall 3. And in fact, they are telling us that they want the ability to change it out without telling the market. So they're not saying what it is. But the fact that here they've put on it risk of battery explosion, that's the words you put on an NMC battery, because as we found out, they can explode, right?
So, yeah, I would also then make the argument that it's probably not NMC, mostly for the fact that NMC is a lot more temperature sensitive. So Powerwall 2 actually had liquid cooling around the batteries, whereas that doesn't have it in Powerwall 3. LFP chemistry is a lot more thermally stable. It's happy to be hotter.
In which case the labeling is just wrong. Hopefully that's the case.
Maybe it's just overly cautious.
Yeah. Well, incorrect.
Incorrect.
So, if you read the standards. Okay. Do we want to keep going here? We may as well.
Not sure it's been answered. Sorry, late to the live chat. Apply to each individual battery. Does it apply to each individual battery module or a full stack? We don't know, but I'm assuming it's the stack. But we don't know if it's going to be multiple stacks or just the one stack.
Say that again.
Is this one battery?
Is
this one battery?
Same question as before.
Yeah.
Don't know. Daniel R just said the weight went up a lot, but so surely that means LFP. I didn't actually know that LFP was.
LFP is less energy dense. Yeah, it's heavier.
Yeah. Okay. So, but you have got an inverter in there too. So I don't know if I haven't done the math.
But so does the Powerwall. So does the Powerwall too.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So it shouldn't be that much of a difference. You're right. I see what you're saying.
Look, I think from my understanding it's LFP, but I think really what Tesla like the ability to do is change things without having to necessarily tell anybody about the change. It's sort of these incremental changes, incremental improvements instead of a next generation.
If there is a shortage on LFP, they can do whatever they want and change it to NFC without telling us. Yeah.
Or it might be a case that at some point they use their own in-house chemistry. Tesla is a black box, and we only know what they put out publicly.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. Are
batteries more at risk of failure, damage, fire if they get wet?
Okay. So the BYD, for example, we are allowed to put this out in the weather, and they're actually fine if we get sun on it, but they don't want rain sitting on the top of it.
On the battery management.
Yeah. But really just the top surface, which I thought was interesting.
The Tesla can sit in 2 feet of water.
Yes.
I think you're fine as long as it's not 3 feet of water. Look, generally speaking, keep them relatively out of the sun, relatively dry, but you'll be fine.
It's like anything. Like if you put a hot water system inside your garage instead of outside, it's going to last longer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you need to put it on the outside, technically, I'm pretty sure, you can put the Powerwall 3 on the north face of your house without any shelter on it. I wouldn't do that. That's stupid.
I'd recommend a shelter. Definitely recommend a cover.
But if you put it on the southwest face of your house or something like that, where it's not getting smashed with the sun. Better.
Here's a good question from Gap Master. Is it worth getting a quote now or waiting till the 1st of July? Look, realistically speaking, I think getting a quote now is fine. It's only if it just has to be installed and commissioned after the 1st of July. The only thing you probably can't do at this stage is confidently say what the rebate will be and if it's going to even be implemented. But, if you're getting a quote for, say, an 11 kilowatt hour battery, then I think it's fair to, just keep in mind you might be paying $4,000 less, and that's after GST.
I'd actually say, too, at least this is the way that we would work it. If you got a quote from Yorick last week and you want to go ahead with it tomorrow, and this is not me just telling you this so that we get a sale, but there's no harm in going ahead with it. And we'll just say, okay, we're just going to have to work out the rebate when it hits, and that rebate, if it's $4,000, we'll take that off the price when that lands. I guess. So,
that's an easy thing to do for sure. And at least
it's easy for us, but Joe and Camps might have a drama with it. I don't know. They'll be fine.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. We got a donation, so we should probably answer this one.
Oh, what the?
Installing, so from John Myler. Sorry, I pronounce your last name terribly. I apologize. Installing a Sungrow for over 3 years, 0 letdowns, insanely good backup, and none of the extra certification red tape. Sparky's got enough paperwork to deal with. Fronius GEN24 is not keeping up with panel specs.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
That's right. Fronius doesn't have everything going. I get it different. So Ryan, my operations manager, Sparky 2, has been here 10 years. He likes the Sungrow on paper. It does a lot of things that the Fronius can't do. Yeah, I've just heard, as I go around and meet other people in the industry, go down to different events in Sydney and Melbourne and overseas and that, I just hear mixed reviews from Sungrow. and we had not the best failure rate with their inverters, but this was like 3 or 4 years ago,
yeah,
right?
and it's not that we don't have experience with them, but we went for 100% Fronius for a really good reason at the time. So yeah, it's look, definitely not the worst battery inverter on the market. There's Sungrow, I think, is definitely one of the better ones.
Yeah. And when people tell me that Sungrow is really good, it's a little bit hard to argue. For me, it's that reliability experience issue that we've had in the past.
Yeah,
I think,
but I think it is fair to say that Sungrow is a well-established brand with a long history in Australia. So there's less of a risk in that regard than some other products we've recently reviewed.
And I think we can just to be controversial, we can make that stark comparison with Sigenergy that we had a crack at. People thought that we tore it to shreds. I think we gave it a really positive review and then said, but be cautious.
Yeah, is
that Sigenergy has got all the bells and whistles that sort of Sungrow has, more bells and whistles, but it's not established and doesn't have all the tech support, the established business in Australia and worldwide as Sungrow has. So I'd buy a Sungrow system any day over a Sigenergy system if I was concerned about that company being in business, and that tech support being around to help you and all that kind of thing. So,
And look, it's not to say that we're not actively looking at other products as well. I mean, I think we're going to have a look at the iStore, which is a Huawei rebranded product.
I've just gone back on that bandwagon again. I went over to iStore years ago. Actually, we went over there last year as well, and had a bit of a tour with them. Really nice product. So iStore are rebranding Huawei because Huawei is no longer selling their inverters here. Some people don't like that white labeling idea.
I'm not a huge fan. I'd rather sell it as a Huawei, but I'm not going to badmouth iStore because the guys who run the company are a great bunch of guys, and look, it's a competent product. It's just
really good inverter. I'm in the middle of testing their 10 kilowatt single phase inverter at the moment. I really like their battery technology. We checked it out when we were over there.
Even though it has optimizers in it.
Even though it's got optimizers in it, yeah, that's right. So what about Anker? Tell us about Anker.
I think look, I'm not going to ever use the word sexy to describe a battery, but Anker is one that's deserved to be used as. It's a very nice looking battery. I love the screen at the top. We're going to do a review on that at some point in the near future. I've got a couple of little comments about the inverter side of things, but it's a very nice looking home storage system.
Hey, Jack Jockett, is it?
Yep.
Hey, will prices rise just as much as the rebate is going to? So if a battery used to cost 20 grand, it's going to go up to 24 grand. I wish, jellyfish.
It's too competitive.
Yeah, the market is so competitive that it's just reality is that we couldn't put up the price by that much because there's going to be more competition in the market. All these new players are going to jump in to try to get this rebate. So prices will actually get more competitive.
I think overall prices should come down because the more we install, the quicker we'll get at it. Also, just as more volume is available, prices should come down. Yeah. So look, I think it's definitely worth seriously considering a battery from the 1st of July if Labor wins and it gets implemented. But I think it's going to be a net positive for everybody and not just the battery owner, also renters, people in low incomes who can't afford a solar system. It should hopefully bring wholesale pricing down, especially at that peak period over dinner time. That's what drives up prices overall.
And Mark's just saying that Tesla Powerwall 3 gives you 10 kilowatt continuous. That is impressive. Yes, I agree. It's a beast of a battery. Yeah,
charge rate's a little bit slow at 5, but the discharge is impressive.
Yeah, no, it's great. What do you reckon? We've got to keep going here.
I think that we should probably wrap it up there. There's a few questions that I don't know the answers to, but I can't find the max continuous discharge rate for the BYD battery. Can you tell me what it is? Depends on the size of the stack. You can look it up in the brochure, but I would say that it's actually more limited by the Fronius battery connection than it is actually the battery itself.
Sure, yeah.
Should we wrap it up there, Mark?
Yeah, well, that was fun. You also went a lot longer than I had planned, but thanks for tuning in. We're going to have to try this again.
I think we'll definitely do a live stream again, maybe for one of the other reviews we do.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for letting me talk about hopefully the battery rebate.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, and thanks everyone for your comments. Appreciate it.
I was not expecting all.